everybody. So it is a beautiful evening here in West Virginia, and it's been a while since I brought you guys out into the garden to kind of look around. So I thought I'd bring you on our mid-July, late July garden tour. We are in that season where the weeds are exploding and spring stuff has pretty much completely finished and summer stuff is jamming. So I'm gonna walk you around and show you what we're doing pretty good on, what's really struggled, and where we're at. So this time I thought I'd start down on this end of the garden. This is where I've got our strawberries and some other things planted. Up until about 3 days ago, my strawberries were doing spectacular. However, we have started having some massive issues with our cow being completely discontent at night when we pull the calf off of her. And so she started busting through fences. Last night, she actually jumped a 4.5 foot chain link fence to get to her calf. So we're working through that. But in her adventures the other night, jumping the garden fence, she ate a ton of our strawberry leaves off, which is just like infuriating. But you can see like the plants themselves look like they're doing pretty good. We've had lots of runners. I've started pruning these runners off of them. I went through about 3 days ago and heavily pruned this, and this is just growth within 3 days. So we'll be back out here soon to reprune all of these. We're getting clusters of like 4, 5, 6 strawberries at a time. I picked a bunch off of this one already today, and we'll see how those ripen up. But all of my strawberries are doing really, really well. I'm really happy with them. The plants are looking really, really healthy. And so I'm hoping as soon, especially with my everbearing strawberries, as soon as the temperatures drop, we've had some pretty warm temperatures the last couple of weeks. So in about a month, I'm guessing probably when our temperatures start to cool off a little bit during the day, that they're going to start producing really, really lovely little snacks for the kids all throughout the day. The next one I'm going to bring you on is, if you recall, or if you haven't watched a couple videos ago in our garden tour, I had a whole slew of like tomato plants that were smaller than my pinky that I had forgotten about, that I just threw in the ground in hopes that they would survive. Same thing with some pepper plants. And this row is that row, and they are doing very lovely. The marigold bounced back. All of these pepper plants have bounced back really, really well. We've got pepper plants down here. I think these are either jalapenos or something. It's a spicier pepper. And so it's blooming. So we should have peppers on that one. Oh wait, there you go. Actually, it's a cayenne pepper. Hello, cayenne. So that'll get real red, and hopefully we can make some of our own cayenne pepper to dehydrate for the garden. But these are those tomatoes that I was telling you guys about, that weren't even the size of my pinky when I put them in the ground, and figured, hey, if they made it, awesome. If not, whatever. And they are putting on tomatoes, and I've pruned them back pretty heavily, but I'm really, really pleased with them. Their stalks are looking really thick. That's my pointer finger, so it's a good size stalk. If I'm completely transparent with you guys, any minute success for me this year is huge, because last year our garden was a complete flop. We may have pulled out a 5-gallon bucket of potatoes. And so any of this doing well is like a song to my soul. We have some more strawberries here. You can see that this is what those plants look like. They were just big and bushy and really thriving, sending off runners and stuff. So hoping, again, like I said, I think these are the June bearing strawberries. So hopefully once the temperatures ease up a little bit on them, we'll start having some delicious strawberries. These next 2 rows were actually rows that I had a bunch of spring stuff planted. So I had onions planted in one of them, and I had greens this spring planted. And so we have pulled both of those out and replaced those now. This row we planted with some green beans. So we're looking to turn some of these beds to get some more green beans planted, so that we can put up a couple more green beans for the winter. This next row is varying ages of sweet potatoes. These ones here in the middle are the first ones I planted several weeks ago, and they are doing wonderfully. They're starting to vine really, really well, because this whole row all the way down is just nothing but sweet potatoes. We have one other row over here. In a minute, I'll show you guys of sweet potatoes, but then we also have a whole slew of sweet potatoes we planted up at my mom and dad's house that we just didn't have the room for, and my mom and dad weren't doing the garden this year, and so they said sure, use it, and so we are utilizing those as well. This next very weedy row is June bearing strawberries. I've got some clusters here. I'm not sure if it got too hot and they started to dry up or what, but they're just not turning too great. I've got a couple blooms down here, some strawberries. So we'll see if those turn out to do anything the rest of the year. And then down here at the end, we've got some sugar snap peas that I'm getting ready to pull, and some cilantro right there that I'm gonna get ready to pull up. And I've got some more cucumber starts over in the greenhouse that I'm gonna throw in those and just get a ton of cucumbers for pickles as the season gets further down towards fall. Over here, these luscious green leaves are my cucumbers. I'm really thrilled with how they're doing. Tons of blooms, tons of cucumbers. I picked about 6 or 8 this afternoon for dinner, and they're just doing very well. A couple of these plants are actually DJ's plants that he ran out of room for, and so he's been using those for family eating, but also to sell to some local friends and family and customers that he has, that he's been selling cucumbers to the last couple of years. These next 2 rows were potatoes and some other assortment of things, and we've turned those now. Here's some more sweet potatoes that are younger than that other row. And like I said, we just threw these in the ground. Even if we just get 1 sweet potato off of them, with them being so young, we planted enough that even just 1 sweet potato off of each plant would be an abundance for us, but hopefully we'll get a couple more than that. This next row is beans. Our family absolutely loves canned green beans in the winter, and so any bed that I can turn to put beans in, we are gonna do it. Down here is my only successful planting of spring garlic, and I'm not even sure that I would consider it a success. The bulbs are just tiny. They're not doing much of anything. Definitely after this experiment, gonna for sure make sure I get all of my fall garlic planted this year, so that we have an abundance of garlic come next year for us. This next row here looks like it's pretty much petering out. It's got some beans on it still. When we were doing our pick today, some of these I think probably have another day or 2. But you can see they're starting to not grow full length and be really pretty. The plants are slowly starting to die back. I think they still have a little bit on them, but we don't have any more blooms on these plants except for a couple on down. So we're gonna give these guys a couple more days before we pull this row. And then, so this side here is green beans, and this side here are potatoes that have pretty much all died back. So they're about ready to be pulled. You can see here we've got a couple potato plants that are still left standing upright. But both this row that I just showed you and the row right next to it is the same thing. It's potatoes and beans, or potatoes and shelling peas. Now, my first time planting shelling peas was this year, and it was unsuccessful. I'm not sure if it was the germination rate, if it was the weeds that just kind of took over it, but they did not do very well. However, as I was pulling these said peas and weeds, we did find an abundance of volunteer tomatoes. And so some of them I transplanted just to kind of see if I can keep them from crowding each other out. Others of them, we're just letting them do their thing. And so for this upper half, I'm just gonna let these tomatoes go. It's just extra blessing, extra goodness. My kids love spaghetti sauce, Tim loves salsa. So any extra tomatoes that we can get are a blessing, in my opinion, no matter the variety. On down this row are more beans. We picked a lot of these today. You can see the Japanese beetles are starting to find But there are still quite a few blooms on these plants. These are younger plants than the row next to it by a couple of days. And so we're gonna leave this row in until it's completely petered out, and then we'll come back through and replant this. And honestly, what we replant there will a lot determine based on when this section gets done. If it gets done within our window for beans, we'll replant it with beans. If not, we'll save this row for fall planting, because eventually we're hoping that most of this stuff over here will wind up being fall planting. So the row probably where the tomatoes and such are, we'll do garlic, lots of garlic in that row, and the row on over, depending on when all that stuff gets done. And then just grow tons of kale and spinach and lettuces, cover those with low tunnels, and then also hopefully we'll get some seeds started for some broccoli and some other fall crops, so we can have some fresh eating of a different variety come this fall. This next section I'm really thrilled with is my zucchini. It has done very, very well. We've been able to harvest a lot off of it and eat it. Lots of zucchini bread and sauteed zucchini, lots of zucchini boats, and so my kids have very much enjoyed chocolate chip zucchini bread and muffins. Over here is squash right adjacent to the zucchini, and so I've got some little squashes, and then I have some little plants here. So story time. I am, like I said, planting some things up at my mom and dad's, and I planted a handful of things for her to be able to garden up there. She is working, and my sisters aren't home full time anymore, and so she doesn't have time to go out there and work in the garden all of the time like she used to. So I planted her some squash and some beans and a little bit of okra and just some things for her to go out and enjoy and pick. Well, I did all of that, got ready to leave, left, came back a couple days later and realized I had left an entire bag of seeds out there, and it had rained, and so there are hundreds of spinach and lettuce and kale and squash and okra and all of these seeds that are wet and ruined. So a guy that works for me a couple days a week and I went through and planted a whole buttload of squash up at her house, and also planted a handful down here. And so that's what these little babies are. We figured if they grow and they make it before the frost, awesome. If not, they weren't going to be useful after this year anyway, so it's not really much of a further loss. We had a ton of zucchini over there that popped up, and so I transplanted a couple over here. You can tell they kind of got stunted in the transplant, but they've had some blooms, mostly male blooms, so hopefully they'll put out a couple zucchini. But this just kind of helped us finish out a row. This is actually where we had a compost bin at the beginning of the season, to give you kind of an idea. And so we're finishing out these two rows where the compost bin was put. Right now we're just laying down a bunch of dead weeds and stuff that we picked there, just as a visual placement. And then we also, like I said, finished out this row. But back over here, we've got peppers and tomatoes. These tomatoes, I am really, really excited. I have kept a garden several years now, but this year I feel like is the first year where I feel like I'm slightly competent with what I'm doing. And so I went through and heavily pruned these, and the tomatoes on them are just very, very pretty. I feel like we've had a pretty hospitable summer so far for tomatoes. Not super duper wet. I mean, we had a couple days of rain, but these haven't ripened so far as to start splitting or anything. But we have Roma and cherry, and then this is a, I think this is a Cherokee purple. I'm not 100% certain, but these are just so pretty. Look at that cluster. And then some more peppers, bell peppers, basil. So yeah, I would not consider myself a professional gardener at all. I'm a hobby gardener who loves to grow food for her family. And so things like this, like I've not had good success with peppers before in the past. My pepper plants get about, a foot tall and then kind of peter off. The only pepper I've ever had success in the past with is banana peppers or jalapenos, and they have been so spicy that even my husband struggles to eat them. So I purposefully planted the spicy peppers way down there in hopes that it wouldn't affect my bell peppers. We'll see if it works or not. But I'm really pretty with these. They're getting to be big. I had a couple more on this plant, and my little girl who was out here helping me garden one day picked them, even though they were nowhere near being ripe. So I wouldn't call those a loss. I would call those a learning experience. This row here, today we pulled out, we harvested all the potatoes that were in this row, as well as the last bit of green beans that were in this row. And so I'm letting this sit, and then on Wednesday, hopefully, we'll get back to this, get this all flattened out nicely, get the seeds planted in it. We're gonna do beans because we do have just a little bit more of a window, as long as we don't get a super early frost. And we do have a little bit more of a window to plant some more beans. So again, working to fill up that pantry for the winter and get as much beanage-ness as possible. All right, this row is purple beans. I don't think we've actually harvested anything off of this yet. This is a really, really young row, but you can see the blooms on it are just very, very abundant and beautiful. Purple beans are so pretty. So hopefully we'll get a good harvest off of these guys, and then decide based on the timing of the season what we're gonna do in this row. And then up here is that huge volunteer gourd that is just gigantic. I think there's like 3 plants in here. It's a volunteer, so I'm not 100% sure what we're growing, but it's what I call free pig food. So since I don't know if it's cross-pollinated, I'm gonna assume that it probably is. We'll go ahead and just give it to the gourd, or give it to the pigs. Better safe than sorry. That way we don't have kids with tummy trouble. This next row, while the marigold is absolutely beautiful, my poor solitary eggplant and parsley, however, did not successfully handle the cow's visit well. I'm hoping that they will both bounce back, but they are just not looking super promising anymore. The peppers, while she did get a couple of them, I'm hoping that they'll still do well. I think these are jalapenos, which are like a jalapeno flavor, but not the jalapeno spice. While Tim is a huge fan of spice, I'm not a super huge fan of spice, so I really wanted to try the jalapenos to be able to make some more salsa. It's a little more palatable for my personal preference. All right, now we're getting into the jungle of chaos, once pruned, but then grew back extremely abundant. This middle row here is green beans. We've been harvesting heavily off of those the last couple of days, and so I'm going to keep my eyes on them, see if we get any more blooms. If not, we'll go ahead and pull it. You can see the beans are got a day or 2 more on those. These pretty girls up here are sunflowers, and I'm excited to see those. These are some seeds that I had left over that were just kind of in a bin of seeds I had saved a while back. So I'm excited to see how those turn out. And then this is my jungle of tomatoes. I pruned these back just as heavily as that first row and that second row that I showed you guys, and they have just exploded. We had a couple days of some pretty heavy rain, and during that time the plants just put on suckers and leaves and stems and tomatoes and stuff. So it has just been crazy over here, and with all of the bean harvesting we've been doing, I haven't been able to get in here and do much tending to them. So we'll get to these guys hopefully in the next couple of days and try to get them a little under control, and if not, we'll just let them do their thing. The tomatoes are of really pretty size. I think these are all Romas, maybe a variety. But overall, they're looking really good. The peppers are getting a little crowded with the big gourd on the other side of them. So I may do some pruning back on that gourd, but I do have, you can find me, hello little friend, there you are. I do have some peppers on it, so they are doing well. I just need to get them maybe a little less crowded than what they are. This other little section over here is more beans. We've been harvesting off of those. Purple beans, may have another harvest or two off of them. We'll see how they do. This next row, I think, is probably the saddest row for me personally. We don't have a lot of success with corn. I'm not sure if it's our ground, our weather, our rain, our sun, the place I put them, I'm not sure. So we opted to only do one row of corn this year, just as kind of a trial run to see if maybe the more raised rows on the end where it gets the most sunlight would help. And they were doing so well. They were getting tall. They were so close to tasseling. They were doing really, really good. Till Miss Thang decided to do her gallivanting and come in and eat down my corn. So this is the second time she's gotten in here and eaten this, and I am not convinced that this is gonna bounce back. We're still trying to figure out what to do with her. When she has the calf, she's totally chill and calm, but the minute we take the calf off, she goes crazy. I know it's not garden information, but you know, people are like, why don't you just get rid of her? Why don't you get another cow? Lots of different ideas on how to handle her. Well, we don't have enough land to bring another cow on. Even if we just brought a calf on and brought in a lot of extra hay, even with the extra hay, we don't have enough land to responsibly raise more than 2 cows and then a third newborn calf on this property. And so we're still debating. We're confining her a little closer to the pole barn at night, even though that's not what we want to do, in hopes that maybe she'll be content being near her calf, but not necessarily with her calf. We're working through all that. Not garden conversation, but in case you were like concerned or were thinking, well, why doesn't she XYZ? We're figuring it out. I don't like that she gets in my garden, and I don't like that she's busting through electric fences. So we are trying to figure out what to do. However, because we're a small homestead, we're limited on space and time, honestly. We're not really sure what the best plan of action is. So moving back to the garden. I am super excited. Our okra is starting to get buds on it. And so I'm hoping that we will very quickly see that beautiful bright yellow flower. My red okra is even closer. And so I'm very excited, hopefully, that the pest pressure doesn't get too hard on them. But hopefully we'll start getting some red okra to try for the first time very, very soon. We are almost to the end of our lower garden, but I'm excited because this row of sunflowers is just doing so beautifully. It's a mixture of tall sunflowers and short sunflowers, so it's going to be super fun to see how they turn out and what they look like. I think something that's super fun about watching these sunflowers grow is in the mornings, these heads are completely turned the other direction. And so it's super fun to watch how these guys just follow the sun throughout the day. And then at night, they're looking for that last little glimpse of sun as the sun sets over the horizon. It's super, super fun. I also love how the different stems are different colors. It's just like that beautiful variation even within the varieties. It's not just the flower color, but even the stem color is different, which is super, super cool. All right, this last trellis in our garden is just beautifully exploding. I probably need to put like 4 more panels up because it has just been super, super prolific and abundant on vines and leaves. This is a little sugar pumpkin. And so this one's getting to where we're gonna have to soon support it so it doesn't fall off as it gets bigger, but it is just doing beautifully. It's growing on over. We've got another one going, and so we'll start training this one on over. Below it, we have a couple kind of weak but hanging on little cucumbers that we transplanted. DJ's cucumbers, I'll show you here in a little bit, up in the snack garden, were just getting explosive. They were taking up all the space, and so we pulled these two little guys out. They were the smallest ones he had left, and planted them down here just to give them a better chance than up there. And they've done okay. You can tell that they kind of got a little stunted from the transplanting of them. They were a little bit older than what I would have preferred to do it, but they're doing okay. They've got buds on them and little cucumbers, so we'll see how they do. Even just 1 or 2 cucumbers off of a vine like this would be a win for me, because this isn't our main cucumber source. And then this last one, I think I've mentioned it almost every time we've been down here. This is just a fun experiment for me that has just been super, super exciting, and just kind of a source of joy. The trombonzino squash, they are doing wonderfully. We have found that we do really enjoy them. You just cook them like a regular summer squash, and then we've opted to just kind of leave them on there as they get bigger. And if they get too hard for us to eat, we'll use them to store through the winter. We've actually even been able to feed the pigs a couple of times off of them on some of the bigger squash, and so that's been super cool to be able to harvest larger ones and give to our pigs and feed our pigs basically for free. So that's our lower garden plot as of right now. Like I said, we're in the middle of summer weeds, pulling all the spring stuff, transitioning into more summer stuff, and then also into fall as we finish up July as we finish up July and head into August. The last little spot I'm gonna give you an update on is the kids' snack garden. It is doing really nice. I think we're starting to see where our dirt up on this is not super deep yet. It's starting to sink because of the logs and just the gaps. And so we're starting to see potentially maybe a little bit of shallow rooting issues and maybe a little bit of malnutrition, especially over here on these cucumbers on this side. We've noticed just lots of discoloration, but then his bigger ones over here look really pretty. He's just got some really nice cucumbers that he's been able to sell, like I said, to some local friends and family. He's done that the last couple of years and has done really, really well for himself on that. Spencer has an abundance of cherry tomatoes that as soon as they start to ripen, he's already got a list of people who want to buy some cherry tomatoes for him. He's got a couple that are starting to blush, but we're noticing again like this discoloration, and so I'm assuming it's probably where the root systems can't gather a ton of nutrition where this dirt is shallow. And then my lane, he is holding out on these sugar snap peas. He noticed that he was having some new growth on them down at the bottom, and so he opted to not pull these out. He wanted to leave them and see what they would do. And you know what? We built this garden for them, and that's what he wanted to do, so that's what we opted to do. And so then lastly, something kind of fun we've seen. The kids had a bird feeder hanging above this bed, and we noticed a couple weeks ago that some of the seeds had dropped, and they were having random volunteer bird seed growth, and they wanted to let it grow, so we let them do that. That was kind of a surprise. We were like, what is this growing? And then we realized, oh, some of the seeds had dropped and they were growing and sprouting. So that was kind of funny. And then the last thing is our strawberries up here in this bed are doing really, really well. And so I think being in the raised bed, having lots of good dirt, where down there, some of their dirt is a little more shallow. These are doing really, really well up here. And so the strawberries are just a beautiful size. There's lots of blooms. The leaves are very thick. We have pruned these a lot, and I think that's helped. Where they've been up here where I see them all the time, I've been able to give them, this is one of his little sunflowers that sprouted, but I've been able to give them a lot of attention. This is a runner that came off of this first plant, and so we let that one root, you know, just to add to abundance. And then one of their other little seeds sprouted. I'll have to keep an eye on those volunteer seeds to make sure that they don't go to seed and then we end up with weeds in our raised bed, as opposed to a fun experiment that the kids are doing. But I'm really pleased. Like over here, we need to prune these runners. They've rooted, so we'll keep them, but we'll cut them off of the mother plant. But these are doing well. And then the last thing that we're gonna look at is their beans. These have been super fun because I'll just come out here and they'll grab a bean while they're running to the car before we head somewhere. Or if I need like a couple of beans to finish out a jar that I was working on or something for dinner, it's kind of fun that they get to come out here and help provide for our family through their snack garden. Well, and so that's kind of where we're at so far in this year's garden. Like I said, this year has been leaps and bounds compared to past years. I'm super excited about how well things are doing. It's not the greatest that somebody's ever done, and it's not the least something's ever done, but for our family, it is where we're at. It's what we're able to do, and we're enjoying the process. We're getting to harvest potatoes and cucumbers and things, and it's awesome to be able to feed our family on the land that we're blessed to be able to manage and take care of right now. So thanks for joining me on this garden tour here at the end of July. I hope that you guys are having an awesome summer, that you've been able to do something fun with your family and maybe grow something as well. We'll talk to you soon.